By PC Pod or Pad, you're listening to and possibly watching Paid to Play. I'm Rob Farker, your host for this weekly exploration of the dangerous idea that making the things that you love doing, no matter whether others might think of them weird, geeky or even odd, into your income-generating life is the best thing you can do. It mightn't be easy, but it's easier than we think and even fear, and I want to show you how. In this even-numbered episode of my weekly show, I like to talk about my own efforts to find the value that others might have in the things that I love doing, and then to stand by that value and muster the courage to ask others to pay me to do those things. So, this episode consists of 3 parts. Money Where My Mouth Is, where I talk about the things I've been doing over the last couple of weeks and how much money I've got out of them. Basically because I think it's easy to talk the talk, but I like to at least demonstrate to you folks who are watching that I am there in the trenches with you and trying to figure things out as I go mostly. Then there is Musings, where I reflect on the last couple of weeks and narrow down to a particular topic that I think might be of help to all of us, and then the mailbag, which sadly is empty this week. But please folks, if you are watching this, I do welcome your questions, your comments, or even anything you'd like me to read out or show on the show, as long as it's safe for work. And ideally even your own stories and experiences getting paid to play. It's nice to know that you folks are out there in the trenches with me and learning as you go. So, let's get straight into Money Where My Mouth Is. The last couple of weeks have been pretty interesting on the paid to play front. For starters, it is today, Sunday the 9th of August, which means that my Patreon payment phase has come and gone. I received $22 US from my lovely 3 backers for putting up 2 paid episodes in the last month, being July, and I transferred out of that my monthly web hosting fees plus a couple of extra dollars for me. I read an article recently by Danielle Laporte, who is a lady who is really big on finding out what your life is about and then doing the heck out of that. Look her up if you can. I'll see about making a note of her in the show notes, about making sure that you do remember yourself in the midst of all this income generating stuff, and at least setting aside a little bit just to celebrate the fact that, hey, you have done some hard work in all of this, and while it's never a bad idea to reinvest what you earn in your projects, you do deserve a bit of a pat on the back for getting stuck in and doing it every now and again. Fiverr was again interesting. I had a couple of nibbles in the last few weeks. I restarted my gigs. I took them out of vacation mode, and I have 3 at the moment. I've got a voice work gig, I've got a drawing gig, and I've got a novel blurb writing gig, which has been the most successful of my gigs thus far. I've had 3 people get in touch to get me to write a blurb for their book, and all those gigs have gone successfully, which has been fantastic. So I actually had, interestingly enough, some nibbles on the other 2 fronts in the last couple of weeks. The first one, voice work, was election advertising, and I actually turned that one down, because when it comes to doing voice work, if it's advertising, overall, in terms of advertising, I'm a little bit leery of it. You'll notice that on the Pay to Play website and in this podcast, I don't do any advertisements or endorsements, except for perhaps Tropicon a couple of months ago, which I was part of anyway. So, and there's a good example. I am willing to endorse something that I myself find value in and enjoy. Because ultimately, even if it is my voice being used anonymously, it is still my voice, and I want to be able to stand by that use of it. So when it comes to election advertising, I am sadly, and if you'll forgive the background noise, that's one of the drawbacks of recording on a Sunday. All the lads and lasses on their Harley Davidsons are out for their Sunday ride, so and I live right next to a service station, you can get quite a bit of background noise, unfortunately. So where was I? Advertising. I am not very political, which is, I will confess, a failing of mine. But when it comes down to it, if I do want to do an election ad, it's because I personally stand by the candidate that I'm endorsing, and I really didn't know the person whom I was being asked to endorse, so I wrote back and said a polite thank you very much, but no, I don't do political advertising, and that was okay. And then I got a nibble on drawing work. Somebody wanted me to do a sketch for a website that they have, which looked very promising. I went and checked out the website and I liked it, so things were looking up, and I responded to the message, and I basically got it in the morning before I went to work. It had come in overnight while I was asleep, and I checked Fiverr at lunch, and I'd had a response back, and the guy had said, "I'm sorry, I went with someone else. I didn't realise, you didn't get back to me, and I only just realised that it was because you were in Australia." So he thought my work was great, and he apologised for the error, but I said thank you very much, and I understand, and made sure that I ended it civilly. And, well, you know what? It was a contact, and it was a question, so it's nice to know that my gigs are being seen out there. People are looking at them and considering them. So, I'm not sure, and I've not really done all that much promotion of them on my various channels, so maybe that's something I need to pick up on a little bit. A couple of other areas that got touched on this last couple of weeks: voice work. I've mentioned Birdie and Mike Diamond in the States, for whom I'm doing some bits and pieces. Although I've got to admit, I've only really done one paid lot of work for them so far, and we got in touch again last Saturday morning and discussed a few things, and I mentioned the prospect of reducing the rate that we had set for me, because very simply they keep talking about when they get the money they love to get me to do some stuff, and well, you know, what's the point if they don't have the money that we agreed on? Then I'm not working anyway, so maybe it's just worth shifting things down a little bit. The other thing is that they do actually need some work for me to do as well, so that's something that they want to make sure they have done, and that they are working on a bit more. So that is really the other side of that coin there. But they did sort of, I mean, heck, you know, this is me, a contractor offering to reduce their rate. They'd be kind of nuts to say, oh, no, absolutely not, you know. So they did sort of see my point, and we are going over the letter of agreement that I drafted, and I've got some notes from them that I need to look over. I like writing letters of agreement for the stuff I do, even if they're not necessarily legally binding contracts. At least they are a clear statement of understanding, and if I give a letter of agreement to someone, they can look at it and say, alright, so this is the basis on which you're going to be doing the work for me. At least it gives it that kind of clarity, if you know what I mean. And it can filter out the kind of people who would, you know, perhaps trust is kind of a tricky thing. I know what some people mean about, you know, a handshake is good enough. If my word is not good enough, and if we're not good enough communicators that more than that is needed, then I don't want to deal with you. I can certainly understand that perspective. I do value the power of the written word and its ability to clarify things. So I do like those letters of agreement. Another thing that came up during a chat with one of my guests, or after a chat with one of my guests, was me offering my services as a person who knows how to podcast for people who are looking to set up their own podcast, maybe for personal purposes or for business purposes, and they don't quite know how. So I have been following that up a little bit with those people who had been on holidays, and they got back and told me that it wasn't an immediate priority for them. It was more of a next year rather than this year thing, which, again, fair enough, understandable. And I wrote back and said, please keep me in mind, and I'll be getting in touch again next year, because I do like dealing with those folks. They're great fun, and you will hear my interview with them very soon. But that is a thought. How many of you folks out there who listen to this podcast have this idea that maybe you would like to try it out for yourselves, but you don't know how? I have been doing this podcast for 3 years. This is episode number 54. So I have quite a bit of experience putting together and publishing a podcast. I also did a podcast with my good friend Marcus Herstick there for a little while for his business. So go and listen to that. It's on the Business Web Integrations website. It has ended. We both decided we want to go in slightly different directions. But please, if you would like to put a podcast together, I'd love to work with you. So that comes to the end of Money Where My Mouth Is. That's what's been going on in terms of me working to get paid to play. But overall, over the last couple of weeks, what are some of the broader things about getting paid to play that I want to talk about? What are my musings on pay to play? At Tropicon, I hosted Pay to Play Live, which was fantastic. Again, I am very sorry I couldn't get a recording of it. Technical issues basically got in my way. But during that, I asked my panelists, what their sort of dream thing would be, what their goal would be, and these were three fantastic people who have already been working to make their dreams real, and to various extents are already getting paid to do them. And Mal, my good friend, the owner of Curse Black Comics and Collectibles, and my co-guest for episode 3 of the podcast, actually turned it around on me and said, what's my dream? What's my goal? What do I want out of getting paid to play? And it kind of knocked me for a loop. I could have said I don't know. I didn't. I waffled, which was not much good. But I do want to touch back on that now, because I think I've kind of got an answer. My dream about getting paid to play. A few years ago, I wrote an article for my personal weblog, The Society for Doing Things. I'll put a link in the show notes and below this YouTube video if you're watching it there, called What Do I Envy, or Who Do I Envy? And I explained there were two bunches of folks who I envied. The folks at Rooster Teeth, who are a US-based web entertainment production company who started out making the videos Red versus Blue. Look them up, they shouldn't be too hard to find at all. Very entertaining cartoons, effectively, based on the Halo series of video games. They record the voices and then they use the game Halo and Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Reach, Halo 4, and presumably they're going to be doing some based on Halo 5, to create animated videos where they get the characters to move around and nod their heads in time with what's being said. They've also done a whole bunch of things since. They do live action videos as well, they do podcasts, and I kind of envy those guys for getting paid to play for the things that they love doing, for making voice work and fiction part of their thing, and for, I guess, being a bunch of guys who got together because they enjoyed the things that they enjoy and hung out and got the bright idea to do something based on them and did it and have just kept going. And another bunch of folks whom I envy is the gang at Penny Arcade. It's a webcomic. It has been going for, 15, 16 years now, at least. I've been following on and off for a little while, and at the time I wrote the article, they'd recently done a Kickstarter campaign where their aim was to basically remove advertising from the Penny Arcade website, cut out the workload that they had from running sponsorships and doing work specifically for sponsors and the like, and just concentrating on making things for their audience. And they were fairly successful. They raised enough to remove advertising from their front page, and I don't know whether they've been doing it as an annual thing or whether they've changed their business model so that they don't need advertising as much anymore. But I still envy those two guys, Tico and Gabe, as they call themselves, Jerry Hawkins and Mike Krahulik, for just starting out, doing what they love doing, and building a thing around that, and getting good friends together, and turning it into a business, and keeping that business being all about the things that they love and enjoy doing on a regular basis. And there's part of me that would kind of like that idea of not just doing the thing that you love, but also it can be kind of lonely making these things. I sit here kind of on my own, and I do, of course, interviews are great. They get me together with new people every episode, but still, I would like to do something on a regular basis that involves the same lot. Pardon me, sounds like that's a cane truck going past. The same bunch of people, and a small group. I've tried working in large corporate environments, and in the end, I don't think it's for me. I don't know. I'm kind of not all that fond of the idea of doing something that ultimately involves a set of skills that, while I do in my own unique way, in the end of the day, I can kind of be replaced, and my personal way of doing things might be missed, but it's not vital, if you know what I mean. And I guess that's one of the cool things about this podcast. It is all about me, and I can, bring as much of myself to it as possible. But, I want to do something that comes from me, and that also I want to be working with people who are doing things that come from them, and we join it all together and, create something that could only have come from us, and do that on a regular basis. Like those folks at Rooster Teeth and Penny Arcade. That, I guess, would be my dream. And another thing that I do... Actually, you know what? We're getting on to 17 minutes now of recording, so there was something else I did want to talk about, but instead I think I will leave that until next week and cut things off there. There's no mailbag this week, as I mentioned, so again, please, if you've got any questions or comments or your own stories about getting paid to play and your successes and struggles therein, please send them through. Make sure that you let me know that you are happy for me to read them out as part of an episode, and that you are happy for me to mention your name or your internet handle, whichever you prefer. So, at the moment, I have 5 episodes recorded and a couple more chats scheduled with some fun folks. My next one that I'm going to publish is going to be with Beck and Ken Drake of Zoo Studio. Go check out their stuff, zoostudio.com. I think there's a .au on the end of that. I'm pretty sure there is. They do wonderful, incredible photos of animals. And, how much more pay-to-play can you get? They say never work with children or animals, but they've got it working with pets and other animals down, and the results are incredible. They were a request of my lovely wife, Vicky, who has been following them on Facebook for ages. And it was great to be able to have them on, not just to chat for her, but also they were a fun bunch of folks, and they were great to chat with, and I'm looking forward to presenting their chat to you. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening, for making the last 54 episodes plus a couple of extra worthwhile. It's fantastic, and it wouldn't mean anything if you guys weren't out there listening and liking and sharing this. So if I can ask you to do some things for me, as I usually do, get the word out about this podcast. Tell people about the episodes you loved. Tell people about the whole thing. Rate it and favourite it, and review it on your favourite podcast aggregator, whether that's iTunes or something else. Like it, favourite it, and share it on social media. There is a Pay to Play podcast page on Facebook and Google+. If you see this on Google, +1 it. If you see this video on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, please. I would also love any comments. You can put them on whichever social media platform you prefer, or you can even put a comment on the Pay to Play website. That would be great. Retweet it. I am on Twitter as at ByrobF, BYROBF. And of course I am on YouTube, as I mentioned earlier on, and as I said at the beginning of the episode, I am on Patreon, and I would very much appreciate your support on that front, even if it is $1 an episode. It all goes toward making this podcast bigger and better, with about 10% off for myself, because bugger it, why not? Yeah, if I can invest back in this podcast with more capabilities and make it more polished and maybe a bit more professional, but still making sure that it comes from me, that would be absolutely fantastic. So, this is Rob Farquhar ending this episode by asking you to stand by your play. You might be surprised how many people like it.